Good evening, everybody. This is Tuesday, March 20th, 2018, and this is the Halifax Board of Selectmen's, well, bi-weekly meeting, just sometimes. As always, or as usual, we are being filmed by Area 58 Community Access Television, available to you on your Community Access Television station and YouTube, if you can find it, because I wasn't able to find it last time. We also, as usual, are going to start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's start with the agenda. Everybody,
Yes.
can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Account KP Law PC 101 Archer Street Professional Services, $2,204.60. Law Account Attorney Lawrence Mayo, Professional Services General Counsel, $3,143.75. Law Account Michael Gilman and Esquire, $1,227 professional service and labor. Selectmen's expense account, WB Mason, invoice date 3/1/2018, $110.60. Law account, Deuce Williams, for February 2018, $3,304.12. Selectmen's expense, WB Mason, $5.98. That seems awful small.
That's the concession stand, right? What is it for?
Was it electricity?
No,
No.
expense.
No, WB Mason.
WB Mason.
Oh.
So it's probably one box of office supplies.
Well, I'm not used to seeing numbers that small.
That's stamped to me,
Aw.
for my notary.
Insurance account, CNA Surety direct bill, $600. And the final one is law account reimbursement to Arena Snow ZBA, reimbursement, $95.22.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Before we move on to general mail, do we have a discrepancy on the scheduled appointments? We have two at 7:45?
No, we don't. We ended up with both scheduled, but one of them should take about 60 seconds.
Okay then, in that case, Mr. Seelig, you're on.
So, Steve Hayward, the highway surveyor, just wanted to inform the board that he expects with this upcoming storm on Wednesday and Thursday that he will go over the snow and ice budget. We're going to need an article at the special town meeting to
Yeah.
cover any overages, but I'll get that set up. We're going to get to the official time for Kimberly Mahoney in a few minutes, so I'll wait on the letter for that. We do have a request for ambulance abatements of $41,194.24
So
for
moved.
February 2018 from the treasurer collector.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay, the
Yes.
Ponset Pond and water levels. Obviously, with all the storms we've had, the levels of Ponset Pond have risen. The Brockton stopped diverting water to Monpont from Monpont to Silver Lake at the end of February. They didn't divert at all so far this month. They said that it's because Silver Lake is full. And I got one complaint from one resident on Friday about the water levels. I contacted Brockton about possibly increasing the amount of water going downstream or possibly diverting more water to the lake. Brian Creedon had told me that the water district would need to make the request and would have to be approved by DEP. I found nothing in any of the statutes.
I don't remember anything in there specifically saying that they had to
I agree.
get agreement from anybody.
Your knowledge of the situation is excellent. So, a couple of things. One is the water level is going down. It's down 3 inches, 3¼ inches since it peaked earlier this month. Obviously, this storm's going to contribute, but I'm waiting to hear back officially from DEP, the legal division, to find out if they're in agreement with the Troy set. If they do, then we'll find another way of, if we do want diversions increased, even despite the fact that Silver Lake is full, which would mean water would go down the Jones River, then we'll find that procedure.
Okay, so I saw some of the emails going back between you
I
and...
started including you
Yes,
and
thank
others
you.
once we...
And I appreciate that, but I know that it was like at 4:30 on Friday was your last response. Did Brian Creedon ever contact you on Monday with a response to
Yeah,
your...
but nothing good.
Okay, all right, thank
Nothing
you.
good that I can use to...
Okay, can you just forward that to me
Yeah.
whenever you get a minute, just because I want to be able to keep
Just
that?
one thing, I saw a newspaper article just last week that Brockton is trying to raise over $4 million for a recovery system for water.
You mean for the leak prevention?
Yeah.
Which would
No,
make sense, no?
not the lake prevention.
No,
Leak. The
I
leak?
can't think of the term of it. The other source of water that they're trying to get to, they started a couple
The
of years
aquarium?
ago.
Aquarium.
Aquarius. I didn't know whether that was factual or not.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I think they've been going back and forth between the city council, I don't mean back and forth between the two bodies, but the city council mayor, they seem to be hot on the idea of using aquarium, then they stop being hot on it, they go back and forth, should we buy the whole plant, should we just buy the water? They seem to be going a lot back and forth on that.
Well, they should be making enough money off the water they sell to other towns that they pull from Silver Lake.
Another good point, Troy. You're right.
I'm hoping that by the next meeting on Tuesday, the 27th, I'll have an update for the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The recycling department, solid waste department got a grant for up to $20,000 for what they're calling the Recycling IQ Kit. The idea here is to reduce the amount of contamination of non-recyclable materials into our recycling stream.
Okay.
Which is obviously important, especially with the markets the way they are,
Yes.
in that the places where we bring recycling will charge us more if we have a contaminated stream. So congratulations to Susan Johnson and Steve Hayward for getting this grant. There'll be additional paperwork, I suspect, maybe even the next week. We'll see.
Can we, from the board, send a letter to them thanking them for their efforts?
Sure.
I'm curious how it works, but that's for another
Well,
time.
I think a lot of it is publicity. Funds can be used to print and mail outreach materials. For instance, Jason Crowley just had on Halifax Locals earlier today a video, not for Halifax, but from another community, showing materials. Here's things you can recycle, here's the things that can't, here's what you could do with them, type of thing, in a sense of trying to educate people, in essence, that these things can be in the recycling stream and these can't. I know Rhode Island, for instance, has a similar effort. They'll do sort of, item of the week and say, yes, for instance, this week, today was not fluorescent. Fluorescent bulbs because of the mercury. Well, they can be recycled, but you can't just throw them in the bin. You got to bring them either to the facility, the central facility you have in Rhode Island, or some other places
Recycling
accepting
takes
it.
it, yeah.
Right, here, for instance. But as an example, you can't just throw them in the bin. Why? Because they'll
Right.
break, the mercury will get out.
Absolutely
things
right.
get
So you
contaminated.
gotta deal with them the same way we do with plastic bags, you have to have a separate container to put them in.
Right, separate them out, and they can be brought to a separate, to the facility or to the supermarket or
Yeah.
something. But the idea is do a lot more publicity, of whether it's mailings, whether it's videos, anything else that works to get the people to understand that you can't just throw anything you want into the recycling bin.
Right.
Let's see. The building inspector has asked for the board of selectmen to appoint me again as a temporary zoning enforcement officer for a matter dealing with lots on Pine Street North. The reason is that the building inspector owns one of the lots, and therefore any determination he might make for a third individual would then be, have a conflict with what the value of his property, so.
I'll make a motion that we do that.
I'm going to recuse myself, so you
Okay.
need to, because I also have a financial interest in that particular.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we appoint Charlie as a temporary zoning enforcement officer for the zoning enforcement of the lots and sizes and frontage on Pine Street North, which is off Bow Street.
Second.
All those in favor?
Right.
And back to Monpont, I've been in contact with John Hobo of DEP. he has, for the last month, been trying to get a meeting together internally of the various state agencies and departments
Yes.
that have an interest in Mont Ponce Pond and the aluminum sulfate project. What had happened was, though we had gone out to bid for the pump house design, while that was happening, he was getting some feedback from various agencies indicating, well, maybe we should be doing another dosage of aluminum sulfate from both rather than go for the pump house immediately. So he's going to have an internal meeting on Friday to see if the state can come out with a sort of unified opinion as to which way they would like to go. And there might be additional funding, especially if we wanted to go with the dosage, which the thing is, if we go with a pump house right now, the design's going to take at least into the spring and maybe into the summer. Then we have to go out to bid. There's construction, everything. It's not going to have any effect this year. Whereas the dosage, if we hit it hard enough, might have a very good effect this summer. So I'm going to wait for here, Jonathan. There may be money available still from DEP, but also Department of Public Health for doing some additional work there. So we'll see how that plays out.
Because we have no more capital planning.
Basically, yeah.
Yes.
Let's see. Chapter 61A parcels, the board had heard about this, I think, several weeks ago. This was Fuller and Wood Street. There were several large parcels that the current owner wants to take out of Chapter 61A, but we have first refusal. There is interest from the Highway Department, first, in that Steve wrote, remember, there's a cemetery, a ball fields, a dog park, even a nice nature walking trail would all be possibilities. Not that it would use all the acres that are there, but you could use some of it and leave the rest of it for open space. Wildlands Trust might be interested in participating with the town for purchase, but I think if there's any interest, I think the first thing would be for me to go to the Finance Committee to get a reserve fund transfer to do an appraisal of the properties, because we'll need that in order to proceed. I need to get estimates for that, so I'm not going to go to the Finance Committee meeting on Thursday, I think, to make the reserve fund transfer request, but maybe by next Monday I'll have an estimate.
May I ask you,
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, does the owner have any idea? I'm sure they've had it appraised.
I don't know. but
Obviously, we have to do our own
yes,
appraisal,
right. But when he sent the letter in, he didn't provide any.
Okay.
What's the turnaround time? I mean, are you trying to get it in time for town meeting?
Yes. Because the only way of purchasing it is through a town meeting, and we would need, and it's either at May or we'd have to wait and have it, well, not wait, but because there's a time clock
Right.
attached to all this. We'd have to have another special town meeting, which I don't want to do.
What is it, 90 days?
Something like that, yeah. So I'm going to move that along and go to the Finance Committee.
Okay.
Doesn't mean we have to purchase it, but at least
You
we can have a
should
serious
investigate it.
discussion about what the price would be if we wanted to purchase it. Davis Automotive, I think that's one of the 745s. If you want, the board wanted to take it up now.
Well, we could be approaching 7:45 anyway.
I know that, so what this is a revocation hearing for the fuel storage permit and Class 2 license for Davis Automotive. This is because the owner is in arrears on property taxes and motor vehicle excise. Ms. Davis did put in a $3,500 check into the collector treasurer's office today. They're still behind just on property taxes by $4,000, but she promised to make another deposit of $4,000 within the next 2 weeks. What I'd recommend is the board continue the hearing until
April 10th?
the 10th. I'll put it on for 7:45 again.
So
That way I won't have to do the hearing notice and such.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous.
Then your other 7:45, I
Yep,
believe.
we are now at 7:45, which makes it time for Mr. Edward Flaherty.
I'm actually a good angler.
Well, I was wondering about that, because I know you, Ed, and I
He
was
doesn't,
wondering why I said
he doesn't
Flaherty.
look Irish.
I thought the fellow with you might have been Flaherty.
Well, he's,
Well, that's what we get for scribbling stuff.
Yeah.
I don't care if I'm called everything.
At least you're calling your Ed.
But not by us.
Right.
Yeah.
For the record, my name is Ed Angley. I'm an attorney, and I represent the Halifax Solar LLC. And with me is Bob Grant, who is the chief cook and bottle washer of the company. And so with that, I think just historically, your administrator asked us to come in, and we had snowstorms. We're all,
Oh,
so here we are.
excuses, come on. A
was
little
just
bit of
a-
snow, it's only a foot.
He had to
18
come
inches.
down from the North Shore.
By dog sled? By dog sled, yes.
So anyway,
We were originally gonna have this meeting before we filed the site plan. So, don't worry,
So anyway, we have now filed the site plan, and Charlie asked us to give you a briefing of what's going on, and then we just would
The
let you
reason,
know.
and the reason is because the Board of Selectmen eventually gets into this because more of these projects tend to have what's called a pilot payment in lieu of tax agreement. Eventually, even though we can do, we can discuss doing formal negotiations, we'll go to town meeting has to approve allowing the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Assessors to negotiate a pilot and then approve the actual pilot. So I thought it was good at this point for the board to be oriented about the project, location, size, things like that. So if anybody came to the board and asked them about it, you'd know what was going on.
So with that, Bob will explain the project.
I don't, at this point.
Assume they don't know anything.
Okay, you haven't seen plans or anything, so right up to that, I apologize for not bringing up easel or anything, but these are just basically, we're located over on River Street, right near the intersection of River and Pratt. It's the basically the wide open
places
field, yeah. We're going to acquire a portion of it, about 40 acres, plus or minus. And what we're seeking approval to do is build it's a 4.95 megawatt AC, 7.27 megawatt DC solar array. Those numbers are driven partially by the program that we're targeting to include it in, which is the SMART initiative, the Massachusetts SMART program.
Is this the green area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish I had I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
I didn't bring it.
Yeah.
Actually, to
So I'm
orient-
assuming this is wet, this is wet.
This
and
is
then-
river.
Yes.
Actually, just to orient, and this is the main
Yes.
coming in, so it's right there.
But this is a
Yeah,
That's a well.
wetland,
Yeah,
right?
we've had-
And then this is, okay.
yeah, so what we've done is we've had the wetlands flagged, we've got an ANRAD that's pending with the CONSCOM,
Can
that's
you
already
see
been filed.
Yeah, I was supposed to check with the floodplain, that's all done.
Yep.
Because there was some.
I'm very familiar with that
Some
piece of
discussion about floodplain in that area.
Yeah, we've actually, we've designed the array to stay out of the floodplain in its entirety. So the ANRAD's pending, and then a notice of intent's been filed, site plan approval application's been filed. We've also filed for interconnection with the utility, which in this case is National Grid. So we're in what's called a system impact study process. Ultimately, what we intend to do is hopefully qualify the project for the Massachusetts SMART program, which is the Renewable Energy Initiative. I don't know how familiar you are with it and how it works, but they're going to be opening their window for submissions probably, they're guesstimating it's mid-June at this point, because they're dependent on the DPU, which is currently having hearings on the tariff. And ultimately, they're going to issue their final guidelines and regulations on how the tariff is going to work. And then about 2 weeks later, they'll open the window for submissions, and that's hopefully where we're going to be submitting.
How big a issue is connectivity?
It's an issue. There's no three-phase right there.
Right. And you can't tap into any of the power lines out there because that's still coming from the new plant, right?
Yeah, you can't. Well,
Yeah, the current would.
you can do anything if you have a big enough checkbook.
Yeah, well,
There are logistical things about
Yeah.
getting to the big power, the big 365.
because that was proposed once before, so I had a little exposure to that, the difficulty in trying to.
It's very difficult. Yeah, the difference between this and maybe a proposal like that is, this is what's called distributed generation, which means you're interconnecting with the street.
It's a street, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's basically the three-phase service that you see on the pole
Yeah.
running in the right-of-way.
So what type, who benefits from your service?
Well, there's a bunch of different, basically, participants. The Commonwealth is running the initiative, the Mass Department of Environmental Energy, of DOER, Office of Energy
Resources.
whatever. So this is a solicitation, that was approved by the governor. I think it was about 2 years ago, a year and a half. So the on a macro basis, the program is to solicit up to 1,600 megawatts of renewable energy capacity across the state. And then it gets broken down by service
It's a big
territory.
project.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but the nuance is, one of many nuances in the program is no individual project can be greater than 5 megawatts AC.
What is it, 5 minutes?
5 megs.
Make 5 next.
5 megawatts.
Okay.
Pilgrim is what? 800?
800.
800.
About
Oh.
800 megs that's going
800
offline. That's part of the initiative. Is, you know,
To try
Pilgrim's
to
supposed-
compensate for some of it.
Yeah.
Not that you can ever really compensate for all of it.
So, I mean, one of the things to keep in mind about this project is, first of all, it's at the limit that's set under the SMART program, so it'll never be expanded. It's not like we can, you know, come back
That
next
was my
week and
next
say,
question.
well, guess what? We just got this permit for, 5 megs. We're gonna put another 3 on it because we have a little, we're restricted by 2 things, by the interconnection at the street and by the regs, the regulations under the SMART program. So once it's built, who benefits? The Commonwealth benefits because, they've had some pretty interesting run-ins of late with the Environmental Law Foundation about, deploying renewable energy in the Commonwealth. They've been sued a few times. And there's a lot of incentive for them to actually get this, these types of facilities built. Ultimately, I think, quite frankly, the town of Halifax will benefit because, rather than somebody building this facility in New Hampshire or Vermont or Maine and transmitting that power down here and, paying property taxes to some community or some other state, I mean, this project, these taxes, the jobs that are going to be created during the construction, they're all located right here. And I think as a use, you look at, it's a very passive use.
Yeah, low impact.
Ultimately, what we do is, because of the nature of this ground, it's flat, it's not treed, so we're not going to be clear cutting 40 acres, we're not going to be stumping and grading, moving, 100,000 cubic yards of material. We're basically taking what is effectively,
A platform already there.
a
Yeah,
platform that's already there. All we're going to do is go in and we're going to drive posts. It's what's called a ground mount fixed tilt system. So we basically drive posts about every 12, 13 feet, assemble racking, hang modules, string wire, connect all the modules together. There will be some underground conduit that consolidates the DC energy off the modules and runs it back to the inverters. But once
are the inverters in the panels in this particular layout, or are they going to be on
they're going to be string inverters that are on equipment racks,
racks? Right.
strung on the
Okay.
back of.
Which you typically see. That I knew
Yeah.
some of the new panels were coming
Yeah, they have
with the
individuals.
inverters. And
Sure. And so basically, once we're finished with construction, we don't disturb the ground during construction. We'll end up mowing it twice a year in order to
That's my
control-
next question. How big of an array are we talking about?
Measured which way? Like footprint area?
Footprint area. You got 40 acres, that you could use the full 40 acres?
No, we're deploying on about 25.
Still a huge project.
What is that, 5,600 arrays?
Oh,
many
thank you.
panels?
20,000 panels?
So right here, yeah.
I worked with one at 23,000. So
I mean, they're being built now.
that's about
This is,
average.
yeah, this is average for the Commonwealth. I mean, there are other parts of the country where they're building,
Yeah, if you can-
20, 30, 50, 100 megawatt types of arrays, so
And where's the nearest neighbor?
neighbor.
Off
There
of River
are-
Street.
On River Street.
On River Street's the
There's-
closest one.
There's some houses like down here, as you're heading back towards 105 Thompson. There is, I think, there are some people right here on Pratt. This is basically vacant, this is basically vacant, this is vacant. I think the nearest, so you got this one, and then there's a couple down here.
Okay, thank you.
How are you going to secure the area over there? Is there going to be any fencing or anything involved in this situation, or
Yes.
you did a moat? around?
6-foot fence with a foot of barbed wire.
Yeah. What we basically do is, typically we fence the array, and then secure it secure it with padlock. We have video surveillance. And, again, in terms of activity, once we construct it and once we're off the site, maintenance people might go in there. If they go in there once a month, that's probably a lot to do something, to check on something. So it's really, once it's up and running, it's very passive, it's low profile, there's not traffic.
Doesn't make any noise.
Yeah.
right.
And in terms of,
Views
just thinking
or
about the
anything.
benefits for a community like Halifax, it doesn't consume any services once it's up there. It's not like the houses, there's not trash collection, there's not children going to schools.
Will there be any illumination at night over there?
No. Only, we will have some lights, actually. We typically will put a motion-activated light just at the entrance, so in case somebody approaches the gate.
Hopefully the whitetails don't keep going
I
through.
was just gonna ask if a deer or something could probably set it off. But how long does it stay on for?
Very short, 15, 20 seconds kind of thing, maybe.
Okay. Unless the animal or the person stays.
Yeah.
Are there cameras set up?
Yes.
Okay.
We've had discussions with the fire chief, and we have agreed to whatever he asked us for. He wants Knox box
Yes.
at the entrances, and he would like to have an ability to get around, which sort of accommodate that. We're going to make sure that any areas he would drive a vehicle on would be able to sustain the weight of, like he gave us the weight, and I don't
Yeah,
know, whatever it is, we're going to do that.
Just as a point of reference for size, the solar array on 58 is either 13 or 14,000 panels. So.
Okay.
And at the planning board, we had a preliminary discussion, an informal discussion, and we said that we would supplement the plantings at the street level on River
Okay.
Street.
To sort of block.
And they we're also holding even though the building inspector said we didn't have to, we're holding the setbacks set forth in the zoning bylaw. So you've got a little bit of space, and we'll plant out in the street.
So you're gonna have a buffer zone around there? You're gonna have a buffer
You know,
zone,
Aesthetically.
It'd be a buffer created by a setback.
setback and the plants? Okay.
Does your company have an array anywhere in this area?
We don't have, this is our first one in Massachusetts.
It seems that we seem to be a magnet of late. We have a lot of people
Well,
coming down.
Troy, if I may, a place like Plymouth, where I live, we've got a lot of land. In their wisdom, I put wisdom in quotes, the town meeting voted to not allow any solar
panels in there.
arrays bigger than 5 acres.
Yeah, that makes it economically not feasible,
Right.
or less feasible.
We have a very strong bird and bunny populace.
This property also presents a unique feature where it is not forested,
Right.
which is huge. You alluded to it earlier. Just the fact you don't have to remove the tree growth and/or stump it is a huge plus.
Yeah, and also it's zoned industrial.
Right.
I mean, this is a by right use, and that's important at a bunch of different levels. I mean, the state doesn't want, for lack of a better term, guys like me running around trying to take virgin, farmland or for heavily forested area and, try to propose clear cutting or things like that. So, I mean, in terms of the right location, again, for lack of a better term, I mean, it is a good location.
I presume the Hasiotos have this in, I don't know if they do, have it in
61.
61A.
I don't
No, they don't.
Yeah,
It's industrial. If it's zone industrial, then I don't think
Well,
the
they could, yeah, if they were
618.
growing, they could.
they could, yeah.
But they're not growing down there anymore. They haven't been for
They
years.
stopped growing.
Yeah, and in fact, we've already been, one of the people we have to work through is the NHESP, Natural Heritage.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
right.
we
Yeah.
do.
Yes, and because this is mapped.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've already actually approached them and we've shown them the plan and we've talked it through with them and they've said that, they're fine with it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one particular bird, and they said they didn't think this would impact it at all, so they're not going to consider it a take. So,
And what bird might this be?
I can't remember, I saw it somewhere.
Upland sandpiper.
Ah,
Well, it wouldn't interfere because you're far enough away from wetland. If you got enough buffer there, they got plenty of area in which to nest.
I don't profess to be.
Yeah, right.
The what?
Long as there's the buffer zone, you have the wetland, it doesn't interfere with the wetland.
Oh, I was gonna ask you, because you're more familiar with
I thought that was the same corner, but maybe not.
Yeah, for the,
It's
oh,
closer to,
thank you.
closer to wood.
Closer to wood?
Yep.
Okay.
Do you have anybody in the audience?
I don't have any further questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Nobody's opposed to
Concerns?
tax dollars coming in?
I will make one comment, though. I assume that they know that there's a 110-mile-an-hour wind zone that we're in, because it did make a difference on our ground mount,
Yeah.
for our personal solar, so.
Yeah, we have to design to whatever the wind and snow loading regs are in the insurance industry and the Commonwealth have their limits that have to be achieved structurally.
Thank you so much
I'm
for
good.
coming in.
All I want to know is when I can go plug in.
Your cell phone might get fried.
Yeah, it might be it, but no, thank you very much.
Thank you
Won't
for
be the
coming
last
in.
time. Won't be the
It was
first.
great to be
How have you
back.
been?
I know, right?
You've been a long time.
I lost my, I totally kept my right in this one day just
So I
went.
can say anything I want on that side of
That's right. I make my wife sit on that side.
Oh,
As Charlie mentioned, we've had some discussions preliminarily about, proposing a pilot, tax assessment,
We're-
stuff for some supplemental
we're working on the pilot.
information. We've provided that, yeah, we're in the process of formulating that, so.
Well, I appreciate the
Awesome.
information. Thank you.
thank you
Yeah.
so much for being proactive and coming in and speaking to
No.
us about it.
Feel free to contact us at any time if you have something, and my,
You had me at pilot.
Nice seeing you again, Ed.
see you.
Take care.
Nice to meet you.
and I do want to compliment your staff, because Charlie's been absolutely communications, and building inspector, fire chief, and the assessor. Everybody's been very cooperative and helpful, so.
Thank you so much for letting us know. Thank you.
And I don't tell untruths.
No, they're the unsung heroes.
They are.
Yes.
I learned that when I was first practicing law. I was a law clerk, and my boss took me around, and he said, pointed out the clerks in the courtroom and said, "Don't get mad at them. They don't make the rules, and they run the place." So,
Is that true for us too?
yep.
Darn tootin'.
Have a safe drive.
Thank you. It was nice meeting you.
It's not 8:15, so
Nope,
we've
so we're
got some
gonna do
time.
some things. Back several weeks ago, the South Shore Community Action Council had met with the board.
Yes.
Yep.
They had mentioned at the time that they were going to put in a petition article for town meeting.
Yes.
And they never did.
Okay.
So we're following up on that. We should do,
This is a little higher than they normally ask.
Yes, it is. It's
Yes.
usually 3,500.
right, yeah. So the board could, they were asking if the board would place an article on the town meeting warrant. We'd have to reopen the meeting warrant, put the article and then close the warrant for 5,000. The board could propose it. It could, we never say in the, where it says propose, the assumption always is the person who's putting it in, the department
Yes.
is supporting it, but the board doesn't actually have to support. They could just put it in as a courtesy and then let it, whatever happens at town meeting happens at town meeting with or without the board's support.
Do we have to put it in, if we decide to put it in, do we have to put it in for 5,000? Okay, because we don't have the funding for that, right, Lenny? We barely came up with 30.
35.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah. And with still ongoing talk about the budget, I don't,
I think they'll appreciate it if we even we put it for 3,500.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be inclined to want to go any higher than that.
Yeah.
Well, that's why, first thing I saw was, wait a minute, I'm not proposing this.
you know, a tradition, he did take the time to come in and tell us, so it was obviously an oversight, so I'm happy to,
So the board would vote to do
To
these
open-
several things. Reopen the warrant, place the article for $3,500 for the South Shore Community Action Council on the warrant, then close the warrant.
so moved. I will open the warrant to put this article on for $3,500.
Second.
All those in favor?
Now
Unanimous.
I'll make a motion that we close the warrant.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, even though we're having another storm this week, if the board would declare the last storm a snow day for March 13th, please.
So moved.
Can we be proactive and declare snow
Well,
day for
we're
the
not
next
there
3
yet.
days?
I don't,
There yet.
yeah, the snow amounts are less than they predicted back at noontime, so we're gonna open up, and we'll see how
And
things
you
fall
actually
out.
believe them, Charlie?
Yeah, actually, I have to believe something.
I'm used to the old weathermen, they stick their head out the window, see, yep, it's snowing.
Yeah, right, yeah.
What I find amazing is that, and I hate to say this, when I was younger, 7, 8 inches of
Yesterday.
snow was not that debilitating, but it's now getting so that if we're forecasting 3 to 5, everything starts to panic.
You know,
That's
the
because
scary
Shuts
thing,
down.
scary thing about it is that we didn't have the four-wheel drive. We didn't have the front-wheel drive.
No, no,
And you go through the stores. People that got these big SUVs and they can't drive through the snow.
Well, that's when the kids used to walk to school uphill in the snowball.
Well, I was just
5
gonna
miles
ask you,
up,
I was just
5
gonna
miles
ask you, the kids, I was gonna ask you, like, do you think it was quicker getting home because you had to walk uphill
I
on the
had
way?
a 1.9
Oh, it was
mile
awful.
to junior high school in whatever weather was presented.
I remember those days.
Well, we had transportation, it's called public transportation. You put your money in the slot and you go.
Anyway, I digressed, I'm sorry, let's move on.
We digress.
Okay, we have a request.
It's on vote?
Yeah, we voted yes.
I made a motion. Troy made a second.
Okay, all those in favor, in case we didn't do it, aye.
The fire chief has asked that Dylan Riley be placed on 111F leave for an injury suffered, in fact, during the March 13th snowstorm.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The Selectmen's office received a filing of the U.S. Bank versus Cater Riley in town of Halifax. This is dealing with a property dispute about some of the very small parcels up at the north end of Mount Ponce Street. It looks like we're a party of interest, but not directly affected by this.
Okay.
So council has everything. He's going to file a notice of appearance, but it's not as if it's a taking against the town or anything like that.
Yeah.
Let's see, recycling grant. This is something that Troy signed on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. This is for drop-off equipment at the recycling center. If the board would affirm having Troy sign this,
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
we'll get the grant agreement, I believe, maybe even next week for that.
I would hold off on that one until after.
Okay.
Yeah. Give me-
Burge Pond, just an update from Jason Zimmer. He's hoping that work's going to begin within the next month, being started sometime between March 9th and April 9th.
Wow.
There'll be postings up at the Elm Street entrance for Burge Pond within at least 7 days in advance of the beginning of work. So there's nothing for the board, but I know that the board wanted to keep to date on that. We'll skip on the Plimpton for right now. Just a couple letters from Mass Audubon and Jones River that we got CC'd on the scope of work for the Monpont resource management plan. And I wrote
Yep.
some comments about what they were looking for. Very, in different ways, similar to ours. I mean, obviously they have a different emphasis where they're coming from, but in essence, they're, as we are wanted, a more expansive scope of work that dealt with more of the issues surrounding Mount Ponce Pond and the other water bodies it affects. Speaking of Mount Ponce Pond and stormwater, there's a potential grant for stormwater work with Hanson and Halifax. I'm going to be meeting with Russ Camp and Steve Hayward tomorrow about stormwater, I'm assuming before the snow flies, so Steve will be available. We may need to get some funding for that, but I need to get more information about what's possible with this.
They didn't say how much.
It's going to be in the tens of thousands of dollars. So,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, so. Silver Lake Regional School Committee, I know we hadn't met for several weeks, so some of these things are already known, but just to have it on the record. Silver Lake did approve the regional school budget. They took out another $14,000 at their meeting back at the first half of the month. And that's the budget that's being submitted to the three communities. Gordon Andrews from the Finance Committee indicated at the meeting that he thought the Finance Committee here was not going to recommend it. We don't have any knowledge yet of what Plimpton or Kingston might do. This is not the level we were hoping for when it ended up being $305,000 drop off the original proposal as opposed to the $400,000. So we'll see how that plays out. Finance Committee's meeting on Thursday, and I hope start making recommendations on the budgets, including this one by that point.
When's the elementary school supposed to meet? Have they met?
They're
Tomorrow
meeting
night.
tomorrow night.
But with the
Maybe.
early release day, I don't know if they'll.
Well,
be
I
meeting.
think Joy's posted for Thursday and Friday also, for the elementary school
Meeting.
meeting.
Oh, okay,
So
so,
that if for some reason because she's really envisioning a very short 10 or 15-minute meeting
okay,
for the Halifax Elementary School Committee. So the idea is get quorum, get them in there, get them out there, done.
okay, so because tomorrow is an early release
Yes.
day, we can assume that that meeting is canceled?
No,
Oh, all
no,
right.
No, I think, when I talked with her earlier today, she knew that there was a real possibility that
Okay.
the day would be truncated, but at the same time, it's a situation where the school committee members all live within a reasonable
Okay.
distance of the school.
I'll try.
They can have the meeting, some people more reasonable than others, and try and get it done, rather, because the problem is, even though posting for Thursday or Friday, then the challenge is, well, did people schedule other things that they needed to go to, whereas at least
Okay.
for Wednesday, they were scheduled. And
All
where
right.
they're not trying to do a full meeting, the real purpose of this is to get a budget approved so it can be sent to the finance committee. So we'll see how that plays out.
Thank you.
Let's see, for the roof project of the elementary school, we have one last change order, but this is a good change order in that it is a $20,152 credit to the project. So if the board would approve the change order.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous.
Yay.
And there was a peer review meeting on the fire suppression system project over at the elementary school a couple of weeks ago on the 5th. Including Maurice Platt, who's our outside consultant, who's taking another look at the system and such. I did talk with Habib and Associates today about the timing of the project. They still feel it is conceivable to get everything done within the time frame. Obviously, if we end up with a bunch of more snow days, it's different, but right now, the last day of school is June 22nd. The expected start date for the project was June 25th. There are things that the contractor, whoever it is, we haven't gone out to bid yet, could be doing in the interim.
Prepping.
Doing all the measuring and everything like that, because some of the work is done prefab outside of the building
They
and
could
such.
stage pipe, they could cut pipe, yeah.
So, right now, the plan remains to try and get this project done this summer, get it done completely, so. That's moving forward. We're going out to bid near the end of this month. Bids should be due in the middle of April, within 30 days of the town meeting on the 14th. So the bids would hold, and if necessary, we'll have an article at town meeting if there's any difference in cost
Yes.
between what was appropriate originally and what the bids come in at.
Yes.
We do have a Family Medical Leave Act request for Officer Patrick DeRue of the Halifax Police Department, which I'm asking the board to approve.
So moved.
Just one question, I'll second that. You know what the duration is gonna be?
Let me see, it says, let's see, I've got something. 1 month,
Okay.
Does the board have to sign that?
yes. Actually, yeah. Well, so I need a motion.
I made the motion.
I second it.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye. We have to sign it.
Unanimous.
Yeah, I'll find which place he needs to sign it.
Oh, okay.
It didn't get marked up, so
Okay.
I don't want Tom to sign the wrong thing.
Okay.
No, he doesn't want to sign the wrong thing, right?
So is it, I don't know if you have an 8:15?
Bless you.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It's 8:15. We have the continuation of a dog hearing from February 27th. Kimberly Mahoney, I see our animal control officer here.
Hello,
I think
Noreen.
that Pam
Voting
gave
present.
a copy of this.
How you feeling?
I didn't do that.
I didn't know. I was happy.
Okay.
Well, what it is the snow up here is not Florida.
Exactly.
Hello. Whenever I call her on the phone, I always.
I mean, we're to be updating the board as to what we've received.
Yeah.
So the board has a letter from
The letter.
Ms. Mahoney. Very basically, she has had the dog licensed and vaccinated.
She just
And-
licensed the dog
I
today,
don't, I understand, but
But it's
done.
licensed.
It is.
3 weeks later.
She is following protocols that were outlined by the Board of Selectmen. However, she has not constructed the permanent kennel as described by the board. She indicated she had had some problems with the weather, and also that there were repairs to the house that needed to get done. I'm not excusing or...
No, that's an
but
understandable...
Yeah, but I'm laying everything out. She did mention that if the board, she was not able to come tonight because of work commitments. I think, Pam, am I correct, that she might be able to come on the 10th?
On the 10th, she's going to try to, and she stated in the letter that there are only 5 employees, so they all have designated a day to work, and she will try to switch it off.
If we wanted to continue the hearing.
Continue to the 10th, yeah.
But I don't know also if Noreen had anything additional at
I'd
this
like to
point.
hear from Noreen.
You know, I agree with everything that the board has put into place. I mean, if the dog should get out, we should take, further, more serious steps with this. It's a big, powerful dog, and there have been citizens that have come forward. They want to remain anonymous, but they're alleging that other incidents have happened. I mean, I can't really confirm them. So I'm not sure whether, all the evidence has been presented as far as this dog goes.
Because this is a very aggressive dog. And I just have a couple of concerns. I know I spoke with you after the hearing. I know that I had been a bit spirited about it because it really did concern me that this dog had such rage within it and the amount of damage that he had done to that citizen, and the fact that, in my opinion, and I said this to the resident, I felt like she was in over her head with that dog because she, the first sign of aggressive behavior should have been a behavioral trainer should have come in and worked with that dog. The fact that she could not have the dog vaccinated because, in her opinion, the dog was too violent to bring to the vet is a red flag. So that was 3 weeks ago, of which we met her, and we said the dog needed to be vaccinated and the dog needed to have a license, and it took 3 weeks for that to happen. I totally get the kennel issue, but the fact that it took 3 weeks to go to the vet and get vaccinated, again, is a sign that her schedule or her capacity of knowing how serious and how direct we were to her, and we were pretty
Adamant.
yes, about you need to take this seriously because we care about the citizens of Halifax, and if we don't do something with this dog and another incident happened, we don't want to be responsible for that. And I called you because I had some concerns and I wanted your opinion about the dog and whether or not you felt that, what you thought we could do with this dog. So now that we've seen the 3-week delay, and she's in the letter gonna be still looking for, she knows somebody who knows a trainer, I think we need to keep a tight leash on this, no pun intended, to ensure that the goals are being met. Because again, if there's people who want to remain anonymous have come forward and said this is not the first incident that this dog has shown aggression or gotten out, we need to take it seriously. We really do.
Well, I think that's what you said. I don't disagree with anything you said, but I think it needs to be said to her. And if we continue to the 10th, then it's not hearsay. It's directed to her, and she'll understand where we're coming from.
Yes.
And changes.
Definitely.
So have you seen the dog in the last couple of weeks?
I do patrol that area regularly, and twice today. There is some rumor that the dog is being let out like at 9 o'clock at night type issue.
Okay.
Whether the dog is tied at that time, I'm not sure. Like I said, it's all hearsay. So we'll have to, but otherwise I have not seen the dog out at all on the property, in the front of the property, or in the side little kennel area behind, to the side of the property.
Should we have her come in on the 10th?
I would think that would be appropriate. Have her come in and hopefully we should maybe send her a letter and tell her that we're adamantly, again, insisting that the steps that we outlined be taken, and she should be able to report to us.
Because if we don't have a sense that she is doing the right thing for our citizens and the safety of our citizens, then we're gonna have to make the tough decision to have that dog euthanized.
We also have the dog that's on quarantine until the first part of June. You know, now with the animal inspector not being able to go, I don't know who's picking up the ball as far as the Board of Health goes.
Oh, right.
So they should be setting up some type of thing to check on that dog regularly to make sure it's showing no clinical signs. I mean, that's my understanding what they should be doing, or what Tracy did before
Okay.
she left. So,
So should we send an email to the Board of Health and ask about that? Okay, we can do that, Noreen.
so we can just check on,
And then you're just,
yeah.
you're just regularly going by
I'm
and
going
just sort
by
of,
and just making sure that the dog is not running loose, if somebody, you know.
or outside in the yard unattended.
Exactly. So, you know, the regular routine and making sure all the logs are checked to make sure we don't have a dog fitting the description, running loose on a certain day when I'm not there.
Okay.
So,
And we still have yet to hear from the victim, correct? Okay,
never heard from him.
okay.
Alrighty then.
So how are we
Well,
leaving
then I
it?
would,
We're gonna request
I'd
her.
recommend that you continue the hearing until 7:50 on April 10th. Davis Automotive's on for 7:45. I don't think that will take very long one way or the other.
Right.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much, Noreen, for
Thank you,
coming out.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Stay
glad to
warm
see
in
you
that
back on your
storm.
feet.
Right.
Goodbye.
Although you did pass by me and I waved at you, you never responded. That's the problem.
Okay, here we go, okay? Have a good one.
So the fire chief happens to be here. I think,
Was he invited?
yeah, I would say so. I didn't put anything, you know, some formal card or anything, you know, but didn't put a stamp on it either. We can talk about, do you want me to start on?
Yes, please.
So the board may be aware that the outside consultant hired by the town of Plimpton, Board of Selectmen, did issue its report.
MRI?
Right, issued its report about the fire department. Basically, it was sort of a status review, ins and outs and everything about how things stand with the Plimpton Fire Department, what they're doing well, what they're not doing well, where there may be some room for improvement, and what their options are for the future. Basically, at this point, the Plimpton Board of Selectmen's taken that report under advisement and hasn't taken any action due to that report. I know there's been plenty of discussion about doing some sort of shared services, but the town of Plimpton's not decided to do anything like that at this point. Have not said, you know, we're all in or anything like that. If the town of Plimpton's interested, then certainly they will be, you know, they'll
Have some
contact us whenever
discussions, yeah.
they feel like doing so. But there may be also some opportunities for some shared programming, not in the sense of services. We're not, you know, doing a shared ambulance service or a shared fire department, but there are other things that we could be doing on a shared basis.
Right, so one of the things that MRI identified in their report was some training deficiencies over there, that not everyone was up to the firefighter 1 and 2 standard. As you might recall, we wrote a grant application that I think we received in January, and part of that had $30,000 for a training line. In the grant application, I was specific in that we didn't intend on spending any of that money unless we have a shared service agreement. Since the report came out, there's obviously some issues that, you know, could immediately be fixed with training. One of the other things that MRI identified was that there wasn't a large contingency of trained firefighters that actually lived in the town of Plimpton. So when I started thinking about it, we have some. I think our numbers are pretty good, but it's certainly an area of improvement. So I started thinking about the grant and said that maybe the state will allow us to modify the grant and use some of the money that we set aside for training to run a firefighter 1 and 2 program that would be open to Plimpton and Halifax residents. It would give Plimpton the opportunity to send any member of their staff that's not trained to the firefighter 1 and 2 standard, to the program, and then give both communities basically an opportunity to do a recruitment drive of local residents who are interested in becoming firefighters, and giving them an opportunity to go into the program, and we would be able to cover the cost through the grant application if the state approved the modification.
And you're gonna include EMT training in that, or just
Right, so the
firefighter
second
one?
part of that would be, the first part would try to do the firefighter 1 and 2, and then the second phase would be to run an EMT program. So sometimes people can't afford the program, so we'd be taking that off. We'd be basically, for our community, we'd be sponsoring people who want to get into the fire service. They wouldn't be town employees, so we wouldn't have to pay them to go, but we would sponsor them to go and cover the cost of the tuition and training.
Now, that's off-site, you're talking about the training you're talking
So
about.
the idea was to bring it, to use the Plymouth County Fire Rescue Training Association,
Okay.
to basically contract them for services where they would supply the instructors, but the program could be held in Halifax at the Halifax Fire Station, use our our equipment, but we'd basically be paying them for the to use the instructors. And I think some early estimates would be around $6,000 to $7,000. I talked to the training association, that was what we were looking at for the cost of instructors to run a program for.
And how many people that,
Somewhere between 13 and 22. So they usually don't run a program for less than 13, and if it's over 22, then they need to bring in additional instructors, so the cost would go up. So we were thinking if we could, get 22 people between certainly the ones that are already employed by Plimpton and that don't have the training, and then open it up between both communities to residents who would be interested in fire department.
what do you think the likelihood of you getting them to change the state to allow us to do that?
I think it's fairly likely that the state would allow a modification.
The whole idea was this was a regional grant in the sense of our regional purpose. If we're stretching it out, not in terms of the region, but saying, okay, maybe we're not there yet for shared services, maybe we'll never be there for shared services, but let's make a training opportunity that more than one community can take advantage of.
Yeah.
In a sense, we're still collaborating together and doing some of the other things that were intended as part of the grant. So even though it's not, totally
Specific,
combining the
yeah.
services or anything, it's certainly a step. It's collaborating with another community to provide training.
It's a great idea
I
that
think
you
it's a
came up
wonderful
with.
idea.
Yeah, great.
So I think I was just looking for approval to approach the state and make that modification, ask them to make that modification.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
So, can we talk about the fire study committee? So, we've had some discussion, Charlie, the chief and I, about, typically, every couple of years, we do like to engage our fire study committee. We did it 2 years ago when we looked at, adding that third person to the shift and how we were gonna pay for it, and we looked at ambulance fees. So, we like to get them together every couple of years, and so I think we all agree that this is the time to sort of bring that particular group together. Again, as Charlie alluded to, we don't know what Plimpton's intention is. We don't even know what our own residents' intentions will be. But I think that we should be proactive in the sense of getting our committee back together to sort of look at our department and look at perhaps the MRI report in more depth, and to look at the different proposals that when we spoke with Plimpton a year and a half ago, the chief had sort of come up with some ideas. But beyond that, again, beyond the idea of shared services, it's a good idea to look at the department, look at how far we've come even in the last couple of years by the things that we've done, and look at other ways that we could improve our service. You've done a wonderful job. The department has done an outstanding job, but it's important to look.
Challenges that, me personally, I've looked at it and said, I think shared services could help with some of those things. But like Kim said, I think it's best to have a committee who's gonna vet out those ideas. From our understanding that Plimpton is assembling a committee to do the same thing on their side. I know we had a brief conversation today that maybe in a couple of weeks, the two committees could just have like a introductory meeting just to,
fill things out.
Yeah, just to have an early discussion as to what it could conceptually even look like.
Well, what I see is an opportunity to use the MRO report, even though it was not for Plimpton, to look in-house and see whether or not there's some improvements or things that we
Sure.
could do.
I
Any changes.
I downloaded that report today and read it, and it was quite extensive. I was really taken by how extensive it was, and my first thought was to actually have a discussion like we're having right now to see how and if any of that may or may not apply to us, and see how we stack up.
One of the things that we've done, it's been going on for a long time, long before I started here, was that we kind of do our initial hires are a little different, where we sponsor people to go to the firefighter 1 and 2 program, and then when they've completed it, they come on and then we hire them.
Right.
So on that sense, we know that every time a truck goes out the door, every single person,
Everybody's been trained.
every time is always trained to the firefighter 1 and 2 level, and is either an EMT or paramedic. So I know that would happen to be one piece that MRI was critical of in the report, and that little piece is not applicable to us.
Right.
But there was other things, such as engaging your actual residents that are in the, your actual residents as call people, that I think that we could do a little bit better at.
And maybe with this new training program, it will give people more the incentive to do that. And so I think that's why that was such a great idea that you came up with, because that's a perfect way of engaging new people to be participating in that program. I think that's a great point. But before I forget, I'm just going to put you on hold for a second when we talk about fire study. One of the long members of fire study passed away. Maureen Rogers was such a key part of that particular committee, so that leaves an opening. And so I was thinking about another candidate that could possibly fill Maureen's shoes, and he's actually in the room. Lenny is here, and so I reached out to Lenny to see if he would be interested in participating in fire studies, so that, and I know all of you know him, we just appointed him to capital planning, and he's done really a wonderful job participating in that. And again, I want to thank you publicly for stepping up for all that you've been doing with the research on the marijuana and wanting to be participant, coming to these and finance committee meetings, because it shows that you have such a commitment to your community, that you want the best for your family, and you're here to do the time to ensure that, the town has your opinion, which I think is to be applauded. So I actually would like to make a motion that we appoint Lenny to the fire study committee, so that when we have a date certain that he's able to get sworn in this week, and he's ready to go.
Is Lenny amenable to this before?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, I spoke with him over the phone today. Just to- yeah.
Making sure we were appointing him.
You have any open wounds or anything from this conversation?
No.
So you're
Capital planning is going to go to.
coming on your own accord? Okay.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Hi. All right.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't want to forget that.
I think I'll just
Didn't wanna
close
forget-
by saying, like, if
Yeah.
anyone's watching this meeting, we have no plans at this point. There's been
Right.
no discussions other than what took place back in November of 2016.
Yes.
And
Has it been that long?
that's how long it's been. It's
2 years.
almost 2 years. So just wanted to be crystal
Yes.
clear about
Yeah.
that.
But I also think regardless of what happens, I think we constantly look at those kinds of things, is look at improvements and how
This is
we
an
can provide.
opportunity.
And this is an opportunity. So thank you for pointing out that this is not a done deal,
Not a-
but it's just the very, very beginning of looking at it. And it may work out and it may not, but we'll all learn
And it
something
may or may not
from
be
it.
beneficial to both towns, and it has to be beneficial to both towns in order for it to be
Yep.
of any value.
Right. And our department is something that we're all very proud of.
Kudos.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for
Chief.
coming in,
Have a
Chief.
good night.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Lenny.
All right, where are we?
So, Deutsche Wings, which is the firm that we have been using for our land use cases, that we've switched over firms, but they're still working with us on several different cases. They themselves are splitting up into a municipal law and a labor law.
Really?
Two firms distinct. We're going, because our cases are land use for the municipality, the new firm that handles municipal law will continue to be the firm we're using for those particular cases. And if there are special occasions where we need them, that's the firm we use. Obviously, our regular land use law partner now is Copeland and Page, but they needed a letter from us to say, yes, our intention is to keep them working on these cases and to transfer the files
It's
officially.
been good for us.
Yeah, and I've already given them their okay on all that.
And I would move that we send a letter to them.
Oh, I already actually did that.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm jumping ahead. huh?
Yeah, I know.
Proactive, no,
You really are in
it's called
charge, Charlie.
proactive.
See, and you've been telling us we were.
It's all an illusion. Next matter is 111F status for Sergeant William Caprio. This is for medical bills only for an injury suffered on February 23rd.
So
This was
moved.
submitted by the chief.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
On the Hops Playground, I'm working with the Commonwealth Places crowd granting program to see what we can do about, what the state's doing is just like Kickstarter or something like that, but it's, we've also state matching funds. We're gonna try and see if we can get something organized for this spring. And the BRIC program that they've been doing can work into that, and it's very likely the Hops for Hops Playground, 5K road race might be able to work that into. So we'll see how that comes out. I'm gonna.
Very excited,
Yeah,
Charlie, and
it's
thank you.
great.
It was Charlie found this grant and brought it to HOP, so thank you for,
Good job.
really.
In-law apartment renewal process, the ZBA has sent a note at the end of February asking for comments from several boards and commissions, including the Board of Selectmen, about the in-law apartment renewal process. Back in '98, the town had voted to allow by special permit with various restrictions and stipulations in-law apartments. The permits for these last 5 years. During the last few months, working with town council, we figured out that in fact, these types of permits, if they're time limited, while the applicant could request renewal, under the law, in essence, it needs to be considered a new permit. So that if the process remains as it is, the applicant would have to come in, do the advertising, notice of abutters, and the public hearing and such to have the permit renewed for another 5 years. The ZBA is looking for comments because another alternative, there are probably several, but one other alternative would be a review process rather than a renewal process, in that at the end of 5 years, the tickler file would say, hey, it's time to go take a look at the property, make sure that the person was going to be living there, is still living there, that the shared space is still there, all the other stipulations are in force, and that then that report could be given to the ZBA, and the ZBA could say, okay, everything's fine. Or the ZBA could say, well, wait a minute, there's a problem here, these stipulations are not being met. We'll report this to the zoning enforcement officer, who will then have to take action, tell the permit holder, hey, you've got a certain number of days to bring this into compliance, or you're going to lose your permit.
This is a really hard subject, to be honest. I mean, I said to Rob the other day, if I moved to town and I bought an in-law apartment, I wouldn't even think to call the zoning board to see what kind of permits I need. I would assume it's built, it's mine, I can use it. So
Well,
it gets super complicated.
The fairest way to go, at least in my mind, is to have a review process where a person goes on and review the property, make sure they haven't changed or it's been sold, to check with the assessor's office, see whether it's been sold or not, so that that person be kept updated on it.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
This gets pretty dicey because there's a lot of different ways to handle this thing. There's an argument to be made that if you're giving somebody a special permit to put an addition on their home, now you're controlling the use of it, and it is ultimately a use permit. But as long as it is in fact a use permit, I prefer, because I've dealt with this in the past,
Yes.
the review process is just a much better way to go, because I think there's all kinds of other legal implications by setting time limits on these things.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of 5 years, okay, you have to throw somebody out,
That's tough.
Yeah, and it conflicts with state law that talks about you can't
Go on and tell a person what to do with the house.
regulate the interior of a home. So, it just goes on to so many different things. And there's always the fact, now we do allow by special permit also a two-family. There's other implications in terms of the construction. So I think people have to start weighing how they want to approach an in-law situation.
But I think what you're saying is, we have this process that was in place, and we have the way of regulating or looking at it. But for the new in-laws or potential?
Well,
No, it would change for all.
Yes.
Oh, it would? Okay.
Yeah. And,
Okay,
and I think that's the fairest way personally
okay.
to handle it. A review process, if there were conditions put on it, reasonable conditions, you review it to see, yes, nothing's changed. If the condition was, it was to be a blood relative, for instance, and I think that's actually in the bylaw.
But you have people saying, oh, but he's like a brother.
Well, no, this is where I was going with it.
Yeah.
How do you, reasonable conditions, things that you can actually verify and enforce, that's where it gets tricky. That's where we have to put some thought into this thing and make it workable, realistic.
So I'm assuming, many years ago, and I know you were the building inspector for many, many years, so you really are such a guru for
Oh,
zoning.
no, if I was that, we wouldn't have this problem, but.
No,
What are you saying, that you should have corrected it years ago?
no. So
Well,
this is my
an
question.
interesting dynamic.
I think things usually come up in these, bylaws because people are trying to prevent something from happening.
It's always restrictive, yes.
Yes. So what I would imagine happened is that people wanted not to have a lot of two families.
Right.
And this was a way of not having the 3-family homes built in neighborhoods. Am I correct in assuming that's where it was
Definitely
probably?
to keep the character of the community.
To a
as
single
people-
family.
Yeah, and
Do other towns have this bylaw? Like
some
in-laws?
towns do in-laws as of right.
Okay, which means I have the right to have it tucked.
Yeah. And there are specific conditions on it. Now, again, to what I think you were alluding to earlier
Yes.
is the whole idea was to prevent income-producing apartments.
Yes.
Just non-related individuals renting apartments. The problem with that is, how do you enforce that? It becomes very difficult.
But exactly.
We need to revisit the whole bylaw.
Yes.
Is what we need to revisit.
Which I think later on we're going to talk about the bylaw.
Well, I'm not ready.
Okay.
But at least in terms of this discussion, I think it's more reasonable, and again, I think it's in conflict with other state laws to the renewal process.
Yes.
And to put the burden on people to come back every 5 years to have a full-blown hearing, that seems pretty.
Well, the person may have passed away, from my family might have taken over the house, there's a whole, unless you got something pasted up on the wall saying in 5 years you gotta
Well,
renew it.
our files would have the tickler and come up, and that,
Yes.
and that the building inspector.
No, what I'm
would be-
saying, unless we require a person to put some kind of plaque up on the wall saying this is only good for 5 years, you gotta renew it.
But even, like I said,
This is how we've been doing it for the last bunch of years. I can't remember how, 5, 6 years maybe. They haven't been requiring full-blown hearings. They tried to mitigate it at one point. This is the Zoning Board of Appeals, and to lessen the burden on the individual property owners and say, look, you just have to give us an affidavit. We have to take a peek, have the zoning enforcement officer look at it. But the problem was we weren't doing it legally
oh, well, that would be a problem.
because the way the law
And the
actually
bylaw is
reads.
written.
If you're saying the permit ends on a certain date,
Date,
what
right,
you've
it
told the butters is that the permit ends on a certain date. If you say the permit now is extended with a new permit, in essence, you have to have the new hearing because you didn't tell the butters.
Right, and the abutters might say, no, wait a minute, that person isn't related.
Well,
That-
even setting aside whatever objections.
No, but what if? I'm just
Yeah,
gonna
no, I
give you a what if.
understand,
I'm an abutter, and I'm mad because the new in-law is being occupied by somebody who drives an ugly truck. I'm just making this up.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And I go to zoning and I go, wait a minute, that person isn't even related. So we're gonna make that owner kick that person out of the house.
Or do an ancestry DNA on.
Right. Might be cheaper, $69.
I'm sorry.
No, it's just, again, and I like to think that I know a little bit about town government, and, I sold real estate many years ago. I wouldn't even have thought as a realtor to check with the zoning board of a community to see what the stipulations were for the in-law. I never sold one, but.
So the review process, I think as Tom stated, I think I would support something like
Yeah.
That makes much more sense to me than forcing people to come in and deal with full.
It's fair all around.
Keeping in mind that the whole process of in-law apartments is difficult to govern.
Yes, and so how, do we get a request once a year on average for in-laws, do we know? How often does this subject come up? I know it's come up a
more than
lot
once.
recently.
It's more than one a year,
There's
yeah.
several
Oh, it
a year,
is?
yeah.
Oh,
I
wow.
think you're gonna see it trending higher too.
Yes.
As the population ages.
No, it's the college students that won't leave the house. I want to put one on.
I haven't got one to leave yet.
That's why they have cars and SUVs, put a duffel
You have
bag
any?
out there.
No.
I love them all.
Everybody lives in that.
I love them all, I do. I don't know what that
Just
can
have an extended family.
Yeah, very extended.
All right,
So if the board would like to tell me to send a comment to the ZBA saying we're recommending it be a review process every 5 years rather than a renewal process. every
And
5
please, we need to look at that bylaw so that we don't keep creating the same problem over again.
well, actually,
We have
I would like to say every 4 years, the year before the 5 years is up, so the person is not looking at an extension.
Well, it should be prior to the 5th year. and then-
Yeah.
But before that, we need to apply for an in-law for Charlie to stay at town hall
Yeah, we'll put an in-law
overnight during the
addition
storm
on. Yeah.
tomorrow. Okay, I mean,
So I would move 4 years instead of 5, that way you review it before it's due.
Well,
we wouldn't do it a year ahead.
Yeah, I think we can leave that for a regulation inside the procedures for.
Well,
the
if
zoning
you wait
bylaw.
until the last day.
well, I
and
think
then
you
gotta
can, you
go
can
through
tell,
all this
you can say to the
process.
ZBA that the review process should start sufficiently
to.
prior so that it can be completed before the 5th year anniversary.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I buy that.
I have a question. Is the special permit issued to the property or is it issued to the owner?
Yeah, that's another problem
Yeah.
that needs to be addressed, and that's why we reestablished the zoning bylaw review committee. To your point,
Right.
yeah, I wasn't gonna bring that up as soon as you did. Yeah, it becomes a problem.
Because it's issued to the person, not the
Right.
property.
Right.
Are there any other special permits in town that are issued to individuals?
Yes.
As opposed to a property? Yeah.
Yes. And that's problematic too,
Right.
and on a whole different level,
Yeah, yeah.
and that needs to be revisited as well.
And we're looking for volunteers to serve on the zoning.
Yes, and I'm thinking you're one.
Be an excellent choice.
Yeah, right?
Well, we need, not just people who work for the town, we need people, residents, we need people that are affected by these things to get feedback from those folks.
When you get the day off.
It becomes
I was gonna
very
say, close down the
tedious
gap. We
when you're
could
walking down the
volunteer money
street,
again,
somebody
too.
stops you, so why did you do that? Well, did you go to the town meeting? Well, I didn't have time to do that. Well, I didn't raise your taxes, the town meeting
Right.
raised your taxes because their taxes are going up too. I even had to go to the point where I told one guy, where do I live? What do you mean, where do you live? I said, I live in Halifax too. The taxes affect me just as well as does you. So I must have the ability to lower mine if I can raise yours.
But the zoning bylaws definitely need to be reviewed, and the tricky part there is to pick the ones that are the most, that affect people the most, more often. They all need to be looked at again, because people's lifestyles change, communities' lifestyles change. Things that were appropriate 30 years ago, maybe not so much today. Some things, yes, but not everything. But we pick the ones that are affecting the most people and chip away at them. You can't do zoning bylaw changes wholesale. Number one, you lose everybody at a town meeting. Everybody goes glassy-eyed, and then you get absolutely nothing done.
That
But
would be me.
you can pick those like this. This needs to be addressed as well as some others. So you should fill out a talent bank form, or you should
No,
fill
we're
out a talent bank.
totally
form.
serious.
You don't have to fill the
Or Bob
talent make
should
out, you
fill
got the
out.
talent already, just come do it.
Be helpful, really.
So we have a motion
Yeah.
to support
I
the
move
review process.
The review process.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
The other solar array that is up for possible
Franklin Street.
is on Franklin Street. This is the property that was the proposed
yes.
property for the 40B.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is this
Years
Mrs.
ago.
Yes.
The site plan was actually approved back in August of 16. They're only now coming to the town interested in actually putting the facility in and getting the pilot done. There's no action for the board. We'll have articles, just like for the one for River Street, to negotiate and also approve.
Is this the one that we met with Mr. Springer?
Yes.
on? Okay, yeah,
Have we heard anything about the Summit Street project?
awesome.
No,
No.
what I heard from Holly, Mary, is that it never got, obviously never got built. They're thinking of trying to renegotiate the pilot,
Okay.
but we've got nothing, so.
Okay, no, I'm just curious,
There's nothing for me to be doing with it either.
No, that's fine. I just wondered if you'd heard anything.
Kessel Street, on street lights, Kessel Street our lane was accepted in 2006. There's no mention that the town accepted the street lights, and they haven't been on our bills. We had a resident on Kestrel ask that the town take over the street lights and pay for them. There are 3 street lights, one at the corner.
Don't worry, we won't appoint you to anything else, you don't have to
As soon as you
leave.
leave the room, we're pointing you.
With Summit, one that's down the street a little bit of the way, but not on a dangerous curve, and one's at the end of the cul-de-sac. General principle for the town has been that we'll take over the street lights for intersections and for cul-de-sacs
Yeah.
and for dangerous curves. I am in contact with National Grid to find annual price for operating those 3 streetlights. I haven't gotten that number back yet. Obviously, I think they're pretty overwhelmed with storm damage.
Yes.
But nevertheless. But the resident asked if the board would put an article on for the town meeting for this purpose.
It would have to be a petition, typically we have a petition
Petition
article.
article.
I pointed that out. I said I would bring it to the board if the board wanted to do it, but I did point out generally it's a petition article. But
Yeah.
the thing is, the person originally emailed me on February 28th, which is the day before the deadline for the town meeting, which is why I said, fine, I'll still bring it to the board, but it's up to the board to make that decision. The board could again place the article on the warrant, not necessarily in support, and I told I told the resident of that it may be a situation where the board would do this just as a courtesy, but not necessarily support it.
So
That's a toughie.
we have to reopen.
I'd be more inclined to do it if he came in with a petition and then opened the warrant, but how much time would we have to do that?
Well, basically none, unless you're asking him to get the 10 signatures during the next week, for instance.
That's.
Well, it benefits the whole block. I mean, homes are in there.
There should be at least 10 registered voters on Casco.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah. I would like to see him make that effort.
Because the only reason why we opened the warrant for the gentleman, he had come to see us, and that's an article that we use all the time. And because we typically require a petition article, that's why I don't feel comfortable
Right,
just
I-
opening.
I-
And I feel badly, but once we start putting things on without
If I
petition.
tell, if he does bring it in, if I say to him,
Yes.
if you bring it in by this Tuesday, the 27th, would the board then reopen the warrant to put it in?
Yes,
So not
yes.
gonna-
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely,
I'd be
absolutely.
comfortable in doing it.
Yes.
Then I will do that.
Thank you, Chair.
Opioid law, so I'm not asking for the board to take any action about this tonight, because I think the board has only just now been told about this. There are several law firms in a number of communities that are working on a lawsuit against the opioid manufacturers to
Oh,
recover
yeah.
the costs for what the towns are
Overcharging.
dealing with. Well, I think it's more to do with the costs for the towns having to deal with it, such as the ambulance runs and things like that.
Yes. So I think it started too because the price of Narcan had jumped so significantly. We're pretty lucky in our community because Brockton Hospital covers our Narcan.
But the point is that bothers me about this, and I'm definitely against opioid use, unsupervised use. But when you have all these doctors and other practitioners, they're prescribing it for people, oh yeah, let me do this for you. Do you blame the manufacturers? Or do you blame the people that are causing the manufacturer to manufacture them and pass them out?
So I have information about this. I did contact Larry. He did say it's certainly worth placing the matter before the board. If there's any interest, then he would contact the firms and ask them to come in to discuss. so that, the firms could come in and do a presentation with the board of selectmen about what the lawsuit's about.
I would invite the police chief and the fire chief to be part of that, because it's really their departments that harbor most of the costs.
Okay, so is there an interest in having these, get
Troy?
something set up?
It can't do any harm. I mean, being proactive, at least we know if it does come down on a very serious note, then we make a decision whether or not we want to get involved.
I'm kind of with Troy, whose fault is it really? But at the same time, we should investigate it.
Okay, then it won't be for the meeting on the 27th, so
Yeah, no, that's
it might be for, I'm not even sure, we'll see about when they can come in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just putting, so the board's been notified about this, we did receive a petition article, it got in by the deadline with the 10 signatures. The petitioners are asking that the zoning bylaw be changed so that, called the adult marijuana as opposed to the medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, I guess would be the better term. Recreational marijuana establishments would then be allowed in the business commercial district by special
And that's for
permit.
sales?
All three,
All three?
meaning
Growing,
cultivation,
growing,
processing,
and selling.
and then selling. Because we have everything characterized as one group, not as individual uses. Right now, all three are allowed by special permit in the industrial district. The petitioners are asking to change the zoning bylaws so they would also be allowed in the commercial district. I think they have an interest in doing a retail establishment, that's my understanding.
They don't like that.
So there's a petition article, it will be on the warrant.
There are plenty of buildings down in the,
Pardon?
that building down in the industrial area they can rent.
Well,
That's,
there's also the preschool down there, which is a problem under our bylaw. So,
Well, any way you put it, it's close to the school system.
not within 500 feet,
You can vote on that to change that
or two, but,
distance.
well, we can't increase it beyond the 500 feet.
Not increase it, no,
Yeah,
you could be
reduce it,
within
yeah.
500.
Yeah,
that's
right.
approved.
Yeah, yeah. But they, all they asked for was a change, not of the measurements or anything like that, but just for the business commercial.
but it would place all three of them potentially in the
Yes,
commercial zone.
right. So I'm going to, with the board's approval, I'll forward that to the planning board. I still need to work on our zoning bylaw changes. I'm going to have them in by Tuesday, the 27th, but I'm going to send this along to the planning board now. And try and get a hearing date, either for their, I don't know if there'll be enough time with the other changes to do their meeting the third Thursday in April, but certainly by the first Thursday in May before town meeting. With the board's approval?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Charlie.
There's no action to take on this right now. Pam's just been collecting information about this proposed Class 2 license. The J&D Auto Sales for 320 Montpont Street. This is where we had an auto sales place that sort of went downhill, let's say. The planning board is dealing with site plan review right now. They are looking for comments from the selectmen and the other departments. I would recommend to the board that the comments be sent to the planning board to say that, aside from anything else, that there be strict stipulations about the upkeep of the property, so we don't have another situation like we ran into previously.
I think that's
I
reasonable.
mean, the board could do that also as part of Class 2, but it'd be reinforced with the site plan also.
I agree.
Do you need a motion?
Yes, yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Fieldstone Farm, things are moving along finally on that. They did apply for the large outdoor event permit to the Board of Health, so there's no action to take, so that's helpful. We did, Brian Cook had originally made an appointment to see the board back in February. He never showed up for whatever reason.
He forgot.
He's just informing the board that he and his other interests are going to, I think, be dealing with, I'll call them suits for better, dealing with property ownership disputes between him and others around the Crystal Lake area in the lots there. That's a historically weird
Well, none of the roads were ever
Yes.
in, and everybody assumed the
They were
car paths
accepted.
were the roads, and buildings got built on lots that people didn't own, and it's just a mess.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a particular interest, though. I think we probably ended up with some of those lots through tax title and such.
Yeah, we
But,
think so.
you know, it wouldn't hurt to have things neatened up, but we're not gonna take a position as to who owns the property. We'll let all those folks
Yeah.
hammer it out big time. But he's putting us on notice, simply that it might not affect us at some point also.
So is National Grid coming in tomorrow to discuss how they're gonna deal with
I
this
don't think
next
so.
storm?
I do want them to come in some point this spring. The reason being that, and it isn't just us, obviously. I mean, you saw what happened even with the third storm with places like Clinton and Carver and Kingston. The northwest suburbs, way north of Boston, up by the New Hampshire border for storm number 2, same boat, you know, maybe in some cases worse than we were off from storm number 1. I understand, you know, it's never going to be perfect, and National Grid has only certain capabilities, and if it's a big enough storm, they have to cover enough territory. But there need to be ways that we can reduce the number of outages and the severity of the outages. And I'd like to sit down with them and say, look, what can we be doing, or what can you be doing, because this doesn't work. If we're, you know, as an example, this is storm number 4. You know, we had those 3 storms 3 or 4 years ago, boom, 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 but there were 15 inches apiece at least. We've got to be doing something better, because I know you can open shelters and such, but we don't have the capabilities right now for running overnight, for instance. And I don't, you know, I know there was a talk at one point about doing that regional shelter in Kingston. I'm not sure that, you know, given the storms, I don't know that it
Well,
was
getting
ever.
to it is an issue.
Yeah, there's that
We
too.
can have the shelters on, you know, the fire department and the police department can only do so much, especially if they get an emergency call where they get tied up. How do people get to those shelters?
And, you know, short of everybody having their own generator, which gets a little dicey in some cases, people don't know actually how to have everything hooked up and run it and everything like that. The thing is to prevent this from happening. And we can't change the weather, but we can change what happens because of the weather. And I thought bringing them in would be helpful to that.
Even if they decided to have some special on automatic generators, they could hook up to people's homes and have them all set, because we have so much going on.
We have an entertainment license.
Yeah, and I just have a couple more things. On the Four Daughters, the host community agreement, I did talk with one of the Cannabis Control Commissioners on Saturday at the Citizen Planning Training Collaborative forums up in Worcester at the Holy Cross, along with someone from Copeland and Page, the whole issue on 3% of the community impact fee. Their interpretation of that is basically something along the lines of what I've been talking about, is that there's nothing saying that the two entities, meaning the applicant and the town, can't sign something that says it's 3%. They understand that the two numbers might not resemble each other, that the cost for the town may not resemble the amount received by 3%. And they're looking more forward in the sense of 5 years from now. If we did a host community agreement this year, and 5 years from now, the developer says, well, it's obvious to me that I'm not getting my money's worth for the 3%, but if you set up a renewal clause, that helps prevent that. So I don't know that we're going to get anything official from the Control Commission. I do think, however, I'm comfortable with the idea that we could move forward if we wanted to, given the language in the host community agreement now. There's nothing, I'm not asking the board to take any action now, tonight, about it. I think there are a couple of tweaks that I need to work with Larry about and with Four Daughters about. If we do move forward, there's several things going on. One is the host community agreement. They need to go through, the Control Commission is now up and running to receive applications soon, so that that Four Daughters, if they want to move forward with this, is going to want to have the public forum, not the one we already have, but their own public forum. You know, I'm happy to set it up, and it will be their forum, not the boards, not the towns. And I think they'll work, probably the third area would be the zoning, because they can get a provisional license that is based on the fact that they could get a special permit, not that they have one, but they could get a special permit. And so what would happen is they get the host community agreement, they get the license on a provisional basis, they come back to the town, go through the site plan and special permit process, and if that's granted, then they can get the actual real license. That's where things stand right now.
So that's a period of time.
Yeah, it's not I mean, the host community agreement, we might have something done within the next month or so. The licensing, we'll see how fast the state operates. They know that they only have a certain capability to handle a certain number of applications at any one time.
Well, it goes into effect, what, in June? Did they say the new law goes into effect?
Well, they're going to accept applications this spring, even before June.
Wow.
So they could actually double track though, they could
Yeah.
still go forward with a site plan review
They
and,
could, but I suspect they're going to, and that's up to them. That's, I'm not controlling
yeah.
that process.
There isn't a whole lot involved in that, the
Right.
plans are already done.
aside from the sort of public hearings and everything like
Right.
that.
I had some of the residents want to know if they were giving out free samples.
It's-
Lanny, do you have any comments?
No, I guess just, I mean, if it is in fact 3%,
Yeah.
I just worry about the conversation around where that's gonna go, because I'm not, I don't know if I'm officially in a butter or not because of if the solar array sale goes through, I may not be, but I've certainly found some host community agreements for things like casinos and other major development projects that I think would be beneficial that would, if in fact they do try to test it for reasonability, would fall within the CCC guidelines. And I think it would ease some of the concerns of the people in the vicinity of the facility. So none of that's in the agreement. If you read some of the agreements from the other towns that have written them, they're usually line item numbers. You know,
Well,
either a flat amount or it's going to be used for the.
Yeah, well, I don't think,
X, Y,
well,
and
the
Z.
problem is that I don't think we can spend the money without going to town meeting. As much as they might be in an agreement, the appropriation process, if we get town money, we have to go to town meeting. And certainly, I don't want it being spent on operating. The reason is, for a couple of reasons. We don't know what the market's gonna go do, so trying to depend on that source revenue stream for operating funds makes things a bit dicey. Second is, obviously, whether it's 5 years from now or any other time, the state could change regulations.
Yeah.
And I don't want to depend on that. So my feeling is, is that eventually, if we start seeing that money stream, that the money go to pay, there's a couple of things. One is, as I mentioned about the retirement system that we've got, that we're, about 50%, 55% fully funded. It'd be better for the town long-term to get to 100%. But second is, between Silver Lake, the elementary school, and the Council on Aging, we're going to be taking on a load of debt that this revenue stream could bring down and actually lower people's taxes that way also.
So we're not funding that out of the general fund.
Right, at least some of it won't be
Yeah,
funded
right.
that way. I understand some places they might put it towards public safety or something like that, but the retail facility might be different.
Yeah, it is. Well, it is different in the sense that not only do you get the HCA with the 5-year duration of the agreement, but you also get sales tax.
Right,
on your retail
but my
sales.
point on the retail might be is that unlike the cultivation processing plant, I don't think that the costs of the town are going to be significant. The retail, just like any other, we get calls for everything, Cumberland Farms gets police calls, for instance, for whatever reason. I think a retail establishment, and it's not, I'm discriminating on marijuana or anything, but any retail establishment, Dick Mall's bicycle shop, for instance, we might get more police calls because it exists. I think this place is going to be, as I've said earlier, probably the most secure facility in the town, outside maybe of the police station. And so I think the costs for us are going to be minimal, whereas the retail, there might be additional costs.
That are easily more attributable to the impact in town.
Yes.
I do wonder though, just because like I said, most of the HCA's with the other towns, Douglas and Sharon, there's a couple more, they do have line items in there, so I'm wondering, if it's a possibility, because I just don't know how they get around going through the town meeting or spending those if they've written it in for a specific.
And I'll have to ask. Or maybe they still have to go to town meeting even though the agreement says that's where the money's going.
Yeah.
But they have to get official approval from town meeting or something.
Did they address at all the language that stipulates that the payments and the beginning of the payments will be based on sales of marijuana cultivated at the facility, as opposed to if they were to ship marijuana to the facility, produce
Yeah,
products?
I don't think you know what I need to do is I need to send you the updated version, because I know that Larry was working on that specifically so that we would get a revenue stream, not, as you mentioned, not just from cultivation, but if
Process.
they brought it in from another cultivation facility, as you both said, processed it, which would then increase the value of it, obviously. The added value of having now a product that can be shipped to the retail store. You're right, we need to capture that also.
And I think you mentioned a few weeks ago that something had been added for the property tax abatement.
Right, well, for the nonprofit status, there's a paragraph in there that says, despite the fact it's not, if it ends up being a nonprofit facility, though.
I think it has to be.
Well, for medical, it does, not for the regular recreational.
Okay.
Um,
This is strictly.
That's what they're saying is the recreational.
Because they do have the term medical in the HCA, but I don't know if that's because of the way the statute's written that they need to include it.
But whether it's medical, recreational, or both, the nonprofit status won't affect the property tax. Basically, there's a paragraph, and I'm paraphrasing, that says, even if you're nonprofit, you're going to pay us an amount equal to the amount of the property taxes above and beyond the 3%.
Yep.
So in essence, a pilot that's equal to whatever taxes you would normally pay.
Yep.
And also, there should be a paragraph in there that says, okay, there are some types of manufacturing that under state law are exempt from the personal property tax. So the machinery and everything else, the lamps, whatever. We're going to have a paragraph that says, even if under state law you're exempt, you're going to again pay an amount that's equal to what you would have paid for the personal property tax.
Awesome.
I think that covers our agenda,
Except for we've got a party.
Yes,
Yeah,
we're going
Yeah,
to go
we
into.
apologize.
Yeah, it should be short. We didn't vote.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you very much.
No, we,
Excellent.
you were gonna have us vote,
The
but we did the last
Fire department, did
week.
you get that from the Plimpton Town website?
It's right on their website, right on the front page.
Yeah, and
But it's 134 pages, so it's.
yeah, and
You can get to the
marijuana
awkward
laws
stuff.
are somewhere in that vicinity, so.
I
And
did,
actually, I don't know if council, they came out with the final regulations. I'm still combing through them. I don't know if they got a chance to look at them yet or not.
and I gave the fire chief your email, so
Okay.
he was gonna email you the link.
Okay. Oh,
But-
cool. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny. So do we wanna, before we do the entertainment, like these
Sure.
policies Charlie has passed?
Are you people ready to do those now, or do you want to wait till next week, or?
Was that blank look on my
I
face?
think-
Yes, there's a blank book on the face.
I think we're good. You wanna wait? Okay.
I perused through it, but I didn't
I looked at
in detail.
Yeah, I'm gonna make.
Do you have
a-
them memorized?
Yes.
Okay, in that case. If you have them memorized, I'm good.
You got a tune to go with?
No, but you can whip one up.
Okay.
I know, it was very tedious of you to have to go through this, but it's good to clean up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would like to make a motion that we edit the selectmen's policies as printed in this document that Charlie has passed out.
Do I have a second?
You do.
And we
Second.
have a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay, and you have an
Yes.
entertainment permit?
Yes, William Russell is having a small wedding. Should we tell the date or no?
Is it for himself?
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
I
you do.
think his wife would complain about that.
Huh?
I think you do, because it's
Okay.
on the record.
So it's June 23rd, 2018, and the time is from 4 PM to 10 PM, and there's a DJ, and that's a little later than we normally do music. We usually do
Usually we
9.
need to cut off at
Usually
9,
it's
right?
no, I think it's usually, no amplified music after 9 o'clock.
Right.
Okay, so can we
Okay.
specify that?
Is it not?
I don't know how a DJ does not have.
Right.
I
That's
know,
my-
all right.
Oh, it's right here, it's actually on, the permit itself.
We don't have that.
Entertainment, no amplified music after 9 PM.
Okay, perfect.
Well, then the permit's only gonna be until 9.
And then till 9, because he may have requested 10, but
We
it's
did
till 9.
request 10.
He may not have even considered the
Unless
fact.
he's gonna give everybody earplugs, I mean, earphones, you know.
Do you want
Well,
to talk to him and we
yeah,
can
you
bring
wanna-
this up in
you
2
wanna-
weeks?
It's,
Do you want to just call him so he understands that?
Yeah, because they don't want to surprise
Because he
him.
might want to do the wedding from 3 to 9.
Okay.
No, they've already had the save date cards go out and see
Oh.
what time it is, who knows?
Oh.
I don't know, I have no idea. Well, look, I think
Do you
that's the
wanna-
simplest
He
thing.
said a lot of the neighbors are are going, not, are
Oh.
being invited, but I'll let him know.
Well, let him know anyway, so
If
so
he's
if
not
he-
a
Do you want to
Yeah,
approve it
let's-
to 9 o'clock and
Let-
then?
Yeah,
and
prove
then
it for 9,
tell
and
him?
if he wants to come in and meet with the board to make his case for going to 10, then he can do it.
Yeah, just explain to him that our policy has always been 9 o'clock.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve it till 9.
second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
he'll be in.
Coolio.
And now we're going to go into executive session?
Yes, for 2 matters. One is negotiations with the patrol officers, sergeants, highway department, and fire department, and the police and fire chief contracts. And then also the case and litigation of Andrews versus Town of Halifax.
I will make the motion that we do go into executive session for the discussion that Charlie just listed.
And we will not be coming back into regular session,
Except to adjourn.
the public session.
Yes.
Yes.
All those in favor? Aye.
It's almost
Yes.
7 p.m.
Thank you.